Morning, everyone. It's Wednesday morning, the 5th. Um, Probably ought to be a fairly quiet afternoon as the very large Jewish contingent on the floor of the NYSE leaves early for Passover. Typical, the only time it'd be worse is if it was Friday, which is also um, Good Friday. Okay, so stocks are slightly lower. Um, the point I want to make several points, but the first point I want to make is the ADP numbers came in at 145,000, which was well lower than the estimate. Before the numbers came out, the Dow was down 35, the S&P was down 5, and the Nasdaq was down 10. Here we are a half hour later. I have seen the Dow down as much as 70, but I think that had a little bit more to do with Johnson and Johnson giving up a tiny bit of its gain from yesterday, um, and on the news that they settled the lawsuit for 8.9 billion for the Talc causes cancer deal. It was as high as 163 and a half. It's still 162.70, so I don't really see much going on there. FedEx is up a little on the news that they are somewhat restructuring their businesses. The stock is 232. That's up 551, and absolutely the transports need the help. When yesterday we were down 255, the second biggest loser, and the day before we were also down. So I expect we'll see a little bit of a correction back to the upside there. Foxconn, which I don't have a symbol for, um, and they came out with two bits of news this morning. The first was that Q1 had a greater than expected number for production, but then they tempered it with the fact that Q2 is looks a little soft to them. So, six of one, half dozen of the other. In any event, Asia was up slightly. Really, both Asia and Europe were kind of quiet, mixed. New Zealand raised their rates by a half a point. That was a huge surprise. Um, I don't think anybody was looking for anything from New Zealand, but that being said, that's the way it came in. And Meisner, FOMC member, says that rates are going to continue and that we need a rate over 5% to get inflation under control. Okay, the chart on the screen is oil. And we had the gap up, but we're sitting up here. I hate to, I hate to be negative on this because I'm long term so bullish for actually the crude, not necessarily the stocks, but absolutely the crude. This area of 82 and a half is a problem. Uh, the first day up, the high was 81.69. Then yesterday it was 81.81, and so far today it is 81.24. Um, First of all, I don't like to see gaps in futures charts. They almost always get filled. So there's that. Number two, if we were to close anywhere above this, the low here of 79 at any time in the near future, and then gap down, this would leave an island reversal in the heart of supply. or congestion. So that's kind of what I see there. Really pleased with both the gold and the silver. The silver right now is down about 7 cents, but holding $25. And the gold is up another 840, and the high there is pretty much right where we are. 246.50 is the last. 246.80 was the high. Platinum also up. Oh, pardon me. I'm sorry. That's palladium also up. Platinum down about 5. As far as the dollar, we're down another 2.2 cents, which I think is good. Bitcoin up 285, Ethereum up 42. You know, the bounce off the low in Ethereum was a double, literally, almost exactly. It may have been exactly. I'm going to show you the chart. Um, the issue here is that after this run last year, from a low of 1,004 up to a high of 2016, so a clear double, we're right back there knocking on the door. The highest close there was 1933. Right now we're 1921 and a half. If we close through that, I'm looking at this as a huge bottom, possibly even a head and shoulders bottom, with the neckline obviously right here, right that in that on a on a daily basis, as I said. What the hell is that number? 1933. Bitcoin is interesting, but I don't think that the chart looks like that. I mean, in general, it looks like that. But Bitcoin came down a long way further than that. It's got this little diamond formation. If we come out of the top here, I think the high close on a daily basis was 28,740 or 28,640. So wouldn't take much to deal that. The MACD looks like it's rolling a little to the downside. I mean, it is extended, but it did bounce exactly off this 100-day MA way down here at 19,530, and we're up 50%. So we're not really up the way that we're up in the Ethereum, but we are higher. I also want to put out a little bit of a warning. I'm very conservative. I know that's kind of an oxymoron when you think that I'm conservative and I trade options. But I'm beginning to get somewhat of a bad feeling about the market here. Not that I think we've topped and we're going down and making new lows or anything like that. We could, but that's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at Jamie Dimon's letter yesterday. I'm looking at Barry Steinlich's attitude about the fact that the only thing Jamie's wrong about is how bad the recession is going to be. I'm looking at yesterday's action where everything was basically held in check at under 0.6% of a move in all three major indexes, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ, but a 1.89% decline in the Russell. The Russell, as I remind you, is the companies that need those local and commercial banks to borrow money from to survive. So there's that. I'm also looking at some very overextended companies, and the old expression that my friend Dennis uses is, you can't win the battle if you don't get the generals. And right here, the generals are stocks like NVIDIA, which is, let's see, NVIDIA is since January at 140, has doubled. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying they'll get around to it. Same situation with Apple. the list is kind of long. I mean, I use Microsoft in there, but it's not as extended as some of the others. Um, Meta doubled. I mean, I just think that people ought to be looking at stocks that are in resistance that they hold. This is not a let's everybody short the market. This is let's everybody write some out of the money calls near areas you think are toppy, and then take that money and buy out of the money puts with it to protect yourself. So that's just my thought. And I know this is the strongest month of the year, and that's why I mention it here specifically, because in the strongest month of the year, we'll probably see upside. Also, tomorrow, Thursday, we get all of the numbers that we normally would get on Friday. Those numbers being, let's see, um, initial claims, continuing claims, and um, according to this, it says on the 7th that we're getting the normal payroll, etc., unemployment rate, average hourly earnings. It says that they all come out at 8:30. I'm not sure that that's accurate. But next week we also have core CPI, mortgage apps, PPI. So we get CPI and PPI next week, all on the 12th. And, that could be a little disruptive also. All right, folks, be careful out there. As I said, it should start to get reasonably quiet in the last hour or so of the day, because Passover starts at sundown tonight. All right, have a good one.